in zone 1 you can have your compost pile. So that as you're going to dump the compost, on your way back you can clean your bucket and you can pick herbs so that you can get your lunch made. This is all really just common sense. This is not really, it's not too far-fetched. It really makes sense, especially to people in the country. Well, sometimes. So zone 2 is a place where, you might have, zone 1 you might have a little garden, a small little kitchen garden on the edge of zone 1 and 2. Zone 2 might be a place where you have your chicken coop. You could have your greenhouse and your main gardens where you're producing a lot more food can actually go on zone 2, 3 border. 3 is a place where you can have your orchards, your edible forest gardens. Zone 4 is a place typically for agroforestry, so it's a place that you don't visit very much. You only have to visit, and agroforestry is basically the use of tree crops in the system. It's for fodder, for medicine, for fuel, for food. And I'll make this really clear whenever we go out to my farm and then as we walk through this landscape. Here it's a little difficult because this is a village, so there can be 3 zone zeros. You know, your habitat is a zone 0 for you. Especially, or let's say the hodgepodge. Because it's going to have a kitchen, it's going to have little rooms, all these things. So that's another little zone 0 within a zone da-da-da-da. Now it starts to get complicated, but I want to keep it simple. And remember, zone 5 is where we go get our clarity and our inspiration and our rejuvenation. And we also learn the design principles that have been set forth by whatever you want to call it. Creator, Great Spirit, Nature, Mama, Juicy Earth. You can call it whatever. Krishna, Buddha, blah, blah, whatever you want to call it. But that's the place where it's all working out just fine. It's the place where you see the trees growing and how they're growing and why are the vines growing up them. Isn't that interesting? You know, how come we have lawns with a solid, single tree in it or 3 trees in it in a lawn? You know, there's nothing mimicking nature in that at all. It's actually a suppression of nature. That's what a lawn is. It's suppressing nature. Which is probably why we have all those psychoses of civilization.
Yeah.
So we can go to site analysis. We use observe and interaction to analyze the site, actually. That's the best. Bill Mollison says that through experiential knowledge, through observing and interacting in the system, that is the best information we can gain. We can analyze it all we want with our intellects and our minds, but the best way is through experiential observing and interacting, being a part of it. Sectors means that there's energies that come into the system. Everybody knows this. It's just not everybody designs for it. Everybody knows that there's wind, and it blows, So let's just say, I'm just making this an example. This is the wind sector. The sun sector is, let's say, here. So you're getting a lot of sun. Your fires, they might come from here. So there's a fire sector. Anybody else think of any other sectors? Noise. That's actually considered a vector because it's kind of like a negative, like noise is something you don't want. You want to keep it out. So that's considered a vector. So there's fire, there's sun energy, there's wind energy, and So this is how, if we design correctly, and if we, let's say, I'm just going to give it for instance, if we put dams, if we put ponds here, that's going to definitely slow down the fires whenever we have fires. And if we put a hedgerow here and funnel this energy, we can funnel it or we can block it. If you block it because you have precious crops in this area, that completely makes sense. Now, if you don't have precious crops there, you could leave that open and put a windmill there and get energy. It all depends on how you want to use it, how you design it, what the land says. Remember what I said yesterday, it's really important whenever you're looking at a piece of property, if you consider becoming a permaculture designer or teacher or whatever, or if you have a piece of property like Sean, it's really mostly about what does the land want in conjunction with the client or the person living there owning the property. But it really is about what does the land want. Because ultimately, and I said that the other day, the indigenous people, that's what they asked. Those are the questions that they asked. I was talking this about the little kid with the little kids. Those are the questions they asked, what they called the spirits of the land. You know, whether it was within the wind, or whether it was the fire, or the plants, or the animals. They asked them, what does the land want? And then they made their decisions around that information. So, the sun, fire, wind, all these things are energy. So we can catch and store energy. We can use energy, like the windmill. Sun, well, the best way to catch sun energy is with plants. You know, they're the best way to catch sun. They're the solar collectors of the future and of the past. They've been the solar collectors forever. So, like at the top of the hill here, we have a cistern. Catch and store energy. It's at the top of the hill because we don't have to pump it. So we don't have to have these fancy, I'm sorry, but I have solar panels, but there is problematics with solar. They mine it. And you know where they mine it at?
Yep.
All over indigenous land. And in order to get that indigenous land, they take the languages, they take the culture, they take the babies, the mothers, the kids, away from the land. They set up a system in order to do that, and it's highly unfortunate. So in our industrialization of a green revolution, we have to consider what really is green. I'm just pointing things out. I have solar panels too. I think it's a good transition. However, I do not agree with the mining of the earth. You know,
Not sustainable.
it's not sustainable. And batteries, batteries aren't sustainable either. So anyway, moving on. The whole idea behind any of this is to obtain a yield. Now the question is what is a yield?